Hi, welcome to Stories with me, Shonna. And today we're well into the book, The Barren Grounds by David Robertson, Chapter 10. This is a book for kids that are in middle school, 8, 9, 10, even a little bit older and up. It's fantastic, written by an indigenous award-winning author from Norway House in Manitoba. If you remember, we left off, Morgan was one of the kids that lives with her foster family and her new foster brother Eli. Eli's gone missing, and she has a strong feeling he went into this portal that he created with a drawing, and she's facing a decision. What do I do about this? We're going to learn a lot about just how strong Morgan is in the next few pages. I'm so excited to get into this book. I've already had a drink. I'm cozy and I'm relaxed. There's no interruptions around me, and I invite you to do that too. Go do what you need to do so that you can settle in. Close your eyes if you like, and just let my words go in your ears so that your imagination can picture all the beautiful images that this writer tries to create for you. Or you can leave your eyes open. That doesn't matter either. Invite a friend if you like to listen in. Let's get settled and get into it. Chapter 10, The Barren Grounds. All right. There was no time to waste. Every second Morgan waited was another moment Eli was in the other world alone, maybe dying. And all because she'd said such a horrible thing to him. I don't think that's really true. I don't think it's really her fault that he made that choice to go in that world. The only thing she needed to do before leaving was think of a way to keep the portal open so that when she found him, they could come back. At the same time, she needed to stop the cold from coming in. Shutting the door wouldn't help. The blizzard would find a way to keep pushing cold air all through the house. It would have to be done on the other side. How would I close a portal on this side if I wasn't just going to tear the paper off, she asked herself, and she looked away from the secret room and took inventory of the unfinished attic, desperate for an idea. What would you do? What would you do to close the portal, but in such a way that you could come back in so that the blizzard doesn't spread all through the house and let those foster parents wake up? What would you do? Let's find out what she does. There were skeletal walls and nails and screws and wires all over the floor. The piles of debris means garbage, with drywall and plywood, and that's it. Morgan gathered up 3 pieces of plywood that she thought collectively would cover the portal, grabbed a handful of nails, and took the hammer from the tool bag. With everything she needed, she stepped inside the secret room and closed the door firmly behind her. She pocketed the nails, then tossed the hammer and scraps of wood through the opening. I guess I'm next, she said. She would have taken a deep breath, but the air was too cold and the wind too harsh. She could hardly catch her breath, never mind take a nice, long, calming one. She clutched the sides of the portal, braced her feet against the wall, climbed up, and then through the opening. She went in. Once on the other side, she fell a few feet down, landing in soft, untouched snow. It was like falling into feathers. Have you ever fallen into deep, fresh snow and it's soft? It's a wonderful feeling. Only if you're wearing a snowsuit and you're not freezing. Morgan stood up and saw that she had come out of a hollow near the base of a massive tree, part of a thickly wooded forest. And while the tree she'd come out of was the thickest and the tallest, the others in the forest were no saplings. Sapling is a baby tree or a young tree. These trees, they looked as old as the earth, and it was incredibly beautiful and familiar. Morgan felt an unmistakable tug in her chest, like this was the reason she'd actually come here. This forest she had a strong feeling about being in the forest, didn't she? What do you think that's all about? I think we're going to find out more. She knew better, though, and she shook off whatever pull she felt. She was here for Eli, and by now he could be lying in the fields somewhere alone and freezing cold. She fished through the deep snow, found the wood and the hammer, and proceeded to nail the flat pieces of wood into the tree and over the portal. This took a long time, long enough that the cold pierced through her hoodie and her hands became frozen stiff. I don't even think she has a winter coat on. She had to blow on them or stick them in the kangaroo pocket. Kangaroo pocket is a pocket in the front, like a pouch, like a kangaroo, between each hammer strike. But eventually the portal was almost fully covered. Now at least the attic would be shielded from the blizzard. Katie and James wouldn't notice the cold. But in the morning, if Morgan wasn't back with Eli, they would most certainly notice both of their foster kids missing. Something she'd told Katie echoed in her mind. I won't run away. Remember, she made that promise to Katie. She needed to find Eli and figured that she had 3 hours at most until Katie and James woke up. Morgan willed herself to turn away from the forest, the huge tree, and towards the open field. The wind was ferocious, equally cold and strong and loud, and the snow was deep and treacherous. Standing where she was, it already reached her knees. Regardless, she took a step forward, then another, closer to the village and hopefully Eli. Each step felt harder than the last. The wind was like fire against her exposed face, and it instantly froze the tears that fell from her eyes. Her muscles and joints ached from the effort of moving through the ever-deepening snow, which crawled inside her moccasins and gnawed at her limbs. Winnipeg, the city she lived in, no matter what home she was at, wasn't called Winterpeg for nothing. The winters there were unforgiving, but this winter was 10 times worse. The only thing Morgan could see was white. A sheet of unblemished and endless snow lay in front of her, and snow lifted off the surface and danced wildly in the air like ghosts. What a sentence. Can you picture that in your imagination? Listen again. The only thing Morgan could see was white, a sheet of unblemished and endless snow. Unblemished means no tracks, nothing in front of it, just pure white, fresh snow. But it danced when the wind came wildly like ghosts. Wow, I can really imagine that. Can you? Have you ever been in a super big blizzard like that? Might help you to remember that experience when you're thinking about what this author's describing with Morgan. There was no sign yet of the forest that Eli had drawn on the horizon, no sign anywhere of the village, no footprints that might lead her to him, just white, terrible white. It could have been that she was walking for minutes or hours, but she carried on, kept peering through the storm to see something, anything. She carried on until her legs refused to go one more step, and the white slate in front of her began to turn black. Eli! She cried desperately. Eli! She'd wanted to save him, but needed saving herself. The black came in tiny spots. Those spots grew in Morgan's vision. Don't just die, Morgan. Do something, she thought. She needed to shield herself from the wind and somehow the cold. The storm crushed her from both sides. There was only one place to go, down. She shoveled snow until her arms and hands and fingers wouldn't move any longer, and she lay down in the hole that she had made. There she curled into a ball, shut her eyes, and blacked out, murmuring, "I'm sorry, Eli. I'm so sorry." She fainted. She was so cold. It was so dangerous what she was doing. She actually became unconscious. I hope this isn't where it ends for Morgan. What do we learn about her as a friend? She was willing to go someplace she didn't know she could come back from. Freezing cold blizzard. And her only thought was, what? You're right, she wanted to rescue Eli. How's that for a loyal friend? Oh my gosh. I hope she's okay. What do you think happens next? Let's find out. It sounded like a voice. Oh good, I think someone's come. But Morgan couldn't be sure. She couldn't be sure that she was even still alive. It was a distant whisper, fighting through the screaming wind. She kept her eyes shut, tried to collapse even further into herself. Her body was shaking, burning. "Tanzi, young one." This time it was unmistakable. Morgan forced her head to turn and worked even harder to open her eyes. They'd been frozen shut. Her tears turned to ice. She'd super-glued her fingertips together once and needed to pry them apart. Opening her eyes very much felt like that. But gradually the black gave way to white, and in the middle of that white stood a silhouette. A silhouette means like an outline of a shape. Morgan blinked and tried to focus. The figure leaned towards her, extended its arm, and when it did, flashes of a nightmare came into her mind. It was the fisher. This person, this animal right there. It had black eyes, brown fur, rounded ears, a snout with a black nose and white whiskers. He wore clothing too. A long-sleeved hooded jacket made of light brown leather, beige pants, and mucklucks. Mucklucks are boots. "Come with me." When he opened his mouth, she saw something else about him. 4 long, sharp teeth. "No," she forced out through trembling teeth and lips. What choice was there? Morgan took the animal being's paw and he lifted her to her feet. Wrapping her arm around his shoulders, he put his own arm around her waist and urged her onward, but they'd only gone a few yards when she collapsed, sank into the snow almost as deep as when she dug a hole herself. Morgan woke up staring at white again, and before long realized she was being carried over the fisher's shoulders. She didn't protest. She stayed slack and carried as though she was still passed out, and she just watched his legs dig into the snow and then lift out. "How did you come here, Iskoisis?" he asked. "Iskowe." Morgan tried to repeat the word, but couldn't. Her jaws were frozen. "Iskoisis," he repeated. "Girl, how did you come here?" Morgan rubbed her jaws to give them some warmth and tried to speak again. Through a drawing. She was too exhausted to consider how ridiculous that must have sounded. "A drawing," the fisher said knowingly, as if it didn't sound ridiculous to him at all. "You came here through the great tree." "That big tree, yes. And why are you here?" "Eli." It was all she could say. Her jaw and mouth refused to comply any longer. Eli's name came out like a breath. She wondered if the fisher had even heard her, but after a long time he said, "The other one." Morgan felt a burst of energy. She lifted her head, craned her neck, and stared right at the animal being. "You've seen him?" He said. "I've seen him." "Where? Where is he?" "Here, They were entering a small village that consisted of long houses constructed out of poles and bark cut into rectangular slabs with rounded roofs the same material. Each one looked about the size to fit one family, and they were built among pockets of particularly thick trees to provide shelter from the elements. The thick trees help shelter the buildings so that the wind and the blizzard and probably rain and stuff doesn't get to them. There were 7 in total, and the 7 houses encircled a large thatched hut that stood in a perfectly round clearing. The hut was sheltered from the weather by the lodges and trees and footprints led from the hutch to each of the dwellings. There were fire pits outside the houses and racks that hung over the fires used to smoke meat, but there weren't many pieces of meat hanging there, scraps if anything. "Where is here?" Morgan asked. The fisher lifted her off his shoulders with great care as they neared the entrance to one of the longhouses. She wobbled slightly, and he steadied her. "This is the only surviving village in the North Country," he said somberly. "Welcome to Misewa." Wow, that was a powerful chapter. We learned that Morgan is an incredibly brave and loyal friend to Eli, that she literally risked her life to save him, and that fisher, that animal, was a living being from in another reality, and he saved her life. I'm wondering where Eli is and what happened to him, and we'll find out next week when we read chapter 11 together. I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Bye-bye.